What's up, everybody? Welcome back in. We have an interesting one today, as a lot of you sent me this, and I was like, it can't really be what people are saying it is. And I was wrong. It is a conversation between Colby Ryan and Lori Vallow, mother and son. It is specifically about the ultimate issue and question in the case. What happened to JJ and Tylee? What is Lori's story? How can all this make sense with the text messages we know, the statements she made? They're in better places, they're freed, the issues that they had from her perspective. Well, we get a lot of clarity and answers in the video we're going to watch today. So make sure you guys hit the like button and put your questions in the comment section, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot. So the video is really sad. I mean, you just can't imagine what it's got to be like for Colby Ryan to go through this, but I think he's trying to do it so that people understand exactly what it's like with her and the comments that she makes and how he is trying to navigate this. We're not going to listen to the whole 1 hour. We're going to listen to about 15, 20 minutes in the middle when she actually explains what she says is the truth and what happens or what happened. There's a lot before and after of her, talking cryptic, him trying to get to the middle. At the end, he says, I did my best to not respond, not to lash out, not to just like go off on her like I wanted to so often. And that was very smart and very good job by him, because he just sat back and let her tell the story, no matter how much it flies in the face of the facts and the evidence in the case, which we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about this story and her version of the events and why her lawyers didn't go with it. It's one of the reasons she said she didn't take the stand, but could she have, based on what the evidence was? Would it have been a narrative testimony? And then what exactly her lawyers did eventually do in closing argument that seemingly made her upset, and how it works in with the story. I appreciate all the comments and questions about the hurricane. We can hit those at the end. We can talk about what happened to my dad's house. We can talk about what's going on with mine. We can answer any of your questions you have about the hurricane, the relief, the rebuild. Happy to do that. Would love to do that. We'll do it at the end of this video. But first, let's take a listen to this conversation between Colby Ryan and Lori Vallow. Again, we're going to listen to about 15, 20 minutes. He's really trying to get her to explain this story, explain herself, explain how any of this makes sense, and why she's not as outraged as he is if it was Chad Daybell or Alex Cox or somebody else. And now we get to hear her comments and her story.
So it's going to be heavy. So I hope you're ready for this. They found
By the way, this is a recording via his cell phone through a jail call, so the audio is obviously not perfect, but the way he's setting it up and explaining is this is how they were found. Explain to me what your version is of what happened here. How is this possible?
Little brother in a bag, tied up, buried, and then they found remnants of my sister. Remnants, not even a person anymore. Remnants of her.
Can you imagine why that is? Do you have any reason to think that would happen?
No.
So did you know Tylee's desire of wanting to be cremated?
That was your version of cremating her? That was
it wasn't mine.
Because that doesn't sound...
It wasn't mine.
So we know how Tylee's body was found, and her first excuse/explanation is Tylee wanted to be cremated. Okay. He's like, so that's what you're saying here. That's what you're going with.
But did you know that she had that desire?
No.
Well, so you don't know because you weren't there, but when after Charles passed away, and Alex and I and Tylee were at our table in there at the house in Chandler, and we were going over Charles' wishes, and Charles had put all his stuff down saying he wanted to be cremated, and don't ever put me in a box or I'll come back and haunt you, because he was claustrophobic. He didn't like the idea of being in a box, and he had said all these funny things on his letter to me. And Tylee said to me and Alex at the time, she said, don't you put me in a box either. She's like, whenever I'm out of here, I want to be cremated. That was her big thing.
So why wasn't she cremated?
Put into a box.
Why didn't you cremate her? If
Yeah, like a normal cremation. If her death was an accident or what you describe it as now, why not just a normal cremation? And Lori Vallow, of course, has an answer for this, but it's like that's not what cremation is. That's not what people mean when they say they want to be cremated. Not to end up like she did because of what, he's saying you did. And the jury found that she did. Also, she said that's not my idea of cremation, it's somebody else's or something to that effect, which does she mean Chad Daybell? Does she mean Alex Cox? And the entire overarching theme of this, and for us to remember, is there are still open appeals for Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. There is an open case in Arizona against Lori Vallow. So this is far from over. So for her coming out on the record saying this, I believe, yes, she did know. People asked if this was recorded. I think he did tell her that this was recorded, and it's on a jail call, which she knows is recorded also. And it seemed like they maybe had a conversation prior to this, so everybody was on the same page as to what they were doing. But with all those open cases, all those open questions, she did not take the stand at trial. She did not testify at trial. This was not an explicit theory of her defense. It's a wild overarching theme to think that she did this now, knowing the public was going to find out about it now, not at trial, not any time before. And she'll give her reasons why she's waiting, and we'll see if that makes any sense. But just keep that in mind. How the legal proceedings are still going on around her, and this is what she's doing.
she wasn't murdered, why was she picked?
But she wasn't.
Pieces? Okay, according to what you say, and you say you were there, I'm trying to give you this space without telling you what I think and feel. I'm trying to ask you to
honestly, like, imagine how hard that is. He's like, I'm trying to give you the space. I'm trying to back up, give you the floor for you to explain what you said happened. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to go back and forth. I'm not going to say, but the evidence shows this, but the evidence shows that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to continue to go back and forth. So, Lady Los Angeles, how can this affect her appeal? I don't think it'll have much of an effect on her appeal. I think it could have an effect if she wins her appeal and there's another trial. Potentially. And we'll see what happens in the Arizona case, if they're going to bring in these other bad acts, if she takes a stand in that case, if she gives this explanation, she could be impeached with these statements. So it could affect that case as well.
question, because that's not cremation. I have my brother and sister's ashes. That's cremation. I have them.
Can you imagine coming in on that scene? Can you imagine as a mother, your father now? So imagine you come in and find two of your children deceased.
So here we go. She says she walked in and found two of her children deceased. That's what she is saying. So now he's going to dig into that a little bit more and figure out what exactly she means. But she's saying she walked in same time. Again, we will talk about the evidence. Colby's trying to give her the space to explain her story. We're going to talk about how some of the evidence this makes no sense. But he is trying not to push back because he doesn't want her probably just to clam up and stop talking.
So they just died out of nowhere.
I didn't say that.
You come home or whatever, and both your kids are dead. And then what? You just never tell me what happened? Or you never tell anybody anything? I'm trying to understand you.
You can't, because you can't imagine what that is like. You can't even imagine, you know how much I love those kids. You know how much I've put into them. You know how much I've done everything to protect them. You know how much I've done everything to get Tylee every kind of help, fought in every kind of court to keep her safe, fought in every kind of hospital so they wouldn't do a whole bunch of horrible stuff to her when she was sick all the time. You know what I did for them.
I know.
So you imagine walking in, finding them, and they had been gone for hours. There is nothing I can do, even though you just can't imagine. You can't imagine that scenario because until you live it, you can't imagine that scenario. And when I came in and I knew I knew Tylee had been upset, and I knew that she was upset with me that weekend because she wouldn't stay at the house because Melanie Gibb would stay there. She hates Melanie Gibb, as you know. Everyone knows this. She hated her. And she couldn't stand her smell because she had the essential oils, and Tylee got sick off the essential oils in sixth grade because her teacher made her drink the essential oils in sixth grade to help with pancreatitis, if you remember all that. So she didn't want to stay there. So I asked her to babysit JJ, put him to bed that night, which is what she always has done, right? She was going to sit in bed. I was going to do my podcast with stupid Melanie and Dave, right? So JJ wouldn't interrupt it. And then I was picking him up in the morning to get him ready and take him to school. And when I came in on that scene, and they were gone, I thought Tylee did it to get back at me. I thought it was all my fault. I thought she was mad at me, and that's what had happened. And the reason why she visited me and why JJ visited me and came to me right after that is because to tell me that it wasn't my fault, because I was blaming myself 100%.
And a lot of the, like, this person came to visit me, a lot of that is like in spirit or dreams or things like that. So in case that's throwing off your timeline, but she said, Tylee did it to get back at me. Tylee did it to get back at me. So we're getting some information now that she's literally pointing the finger at Tylee.
100%. Why?
Not Alex Cox, not Chad Daybell, which is interesting, right? As far as where the facts pointed and who could have been involved and who's in the conspiracy. She doesn't point the finger at either of them, but it's not over. And he asks some good questions and follow-up questions, like, what exactly do you mean? And he definitely nails it down of what she's saying, and then asks some other questions that just, again, prove this doesn't make any sense.
Didn't I get Tylee more help? Why did I let her get off of her meds? Why did I not do something different? Why did I let Melanie get to stay here? Why did I do any of these things that would lead to this? How could it possibly have happened? Why and how? Why and how? I mean, you can't even imagine what that is like. No one on the earth can imagine what that's like.
You're telling me that Tylee took JJ's life and then took her own life.
On accident.
And took her own life then? After? So who chopped them?
And he nails it down again with her before. And then now he's asking the question, so what happened afterwards? Because it didn't look like some accidental death and then, somebody taking their own life. It definitely did not look like that. The evidence definitely does not point to that. We all know, we're not going to go into the excruciating detail again about the autopsy reports. I actually talked to a juror whose daughter watches and listens, who's amazing. She seems like an amazing woman, who talked about how brutal that was to go through those autopsy photos and discussion about what happened to these kids. Definitely didn't seem like any accidental death and then taking someone's own life. And obviously those were not the manner of death that was decided or determined.
After? So who chopped and burned her? And who duct taped JJ and put him in the ground? What I'm asking you.
Like, explain to me how they ended up, how they were found. Explain that to me, because it makes no sense with your theory.
You're saying what? So you told me.
Sorry, you're just cutting out. I can't hear what your question is.
So you're telling me Tylee took JJ's life, then took her own life, and then someone cremated her by dismembering her and burning her and throwing her in a pet cemetery, and then somebody bound JJ, put him in a trash bag, and threw him in the backyard. And that was it. That was the end of it.
What I'm saying is I wasn't aware what happened to them after I left that scene.
Okay, so you gave it to someone.
So she saw them and then leaves and doesn't know what happened afterwards. So again, blaming Tylee for what actually happened. But then what happened to them afterwards, she's got to blame somebody else, right? It can't be her. Can't be her because that's a crime in and of itself.
Else. You gave the responsibility to someone else, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
It almost sounds like she knew Tylee wanted to be cremated, so she told somebody else to cremate Tylee, like their definition of cremation. I don't even understand that. It's really hard for me to even follow. Seems like maybe Alex Cox. I don't know. She doesn't specifically say if it was Alex Cox, if it was Chad Daybell. Another thing the juror in Chad Daybell's trial told me, I'm not going to reveal really anything. It was kind of off the record discussion. I learned a lot just as a lawyer. She was able to, talk to me about stuff. She also didn't tell me anything was a secret. And I know this wouldn't be, but the tools, the fact they had the DNA, they were still in Chad Daybell's shed. And, from in her mind as a decision maker and the fact finder in the case, that was a huge piece of evidence. So those tools doing this to those kids' bodies was a huge piece of evidence to the jury, and also makes no sense in Lori Vallow's story.
And then
I didn't. I just ran out.
okay. So you're saying someone else took care of the situation.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said
it's breaking up.
I'm saying that you're saying to me that someone else took care of it. That's it. I don't have to go into more detail there. Somebody else took care of these things. So you
Correct.
okay.
I'm telling you that their spirits were gone from their bodies at that time. They were gone. They were already in heaven. They were already gone.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So Monica said, had she ever admitted to being at the scene before? The scene potentially, because like the podcast or whatever was going on, I think potentially you could connect those dots, but never that she walked in and saw them. Kim, I have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure that she knew this was all being recorded. And yes, it is legal. Well, depends on the jurisdiction as far as like one party consent or two party consent. But if she knew and she agreed to it, then there's nothing wrong with him recording it that I'm aware of. Now, obviously that could differ from state to state, but yeah, and a lot of jurisdictions, there's nothing wrong with this. Why is she wasting everyone's time when she isn't logical? I think he's asking and he wants to know her explanation. I couldn't imagine what it would be to have all these unanswered questions and feel like there's still loose ends and there's still things he doesn't know that he wish he knew. And I think it probably helps him, even if she explains a story that's totally outlandish and makes no sense, at least he's like, okay, fine. So there isn't some real story that all the evidence points to. Because if Tylee did this to JJ and then herself, and it happened like she said it happened, why did people not see Tylee for so many days in time before JJ was still being seen and babysat and then never saw JJ again? It seemed like Tylee passed before JJ. So how does that make sense then with the money going in Tylee's account and out of it to Colby Ryan's account and her collecting the Social Security checks? Like none of that lines up. When the bodies were found and the testing was done and the dates of death were found or were determined based on what they found. Again, it was imperfect because of what was done to the bodies, but it doesn't really line up. Alicia, would love for your take on the Ferris trial. Wife is tried for M of attorney, husband defenses blaming sons and dragging them through the mud. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard anything about this. If you guys are watching, let me know. It's going to be hard for me to catch up with the trial. I have no internet at my house, so impossible to watch a trial, especially over the weekend. But if you guys let me know, I can maybe do something on it if I find a clip or a part of the trial that's in need of some legal analysis.
You're saying that they were gone, and why, if that's the case, then why wouldn't you just tell us? What was their secret?
Why wouldn't you just call the cops? If it was an accident and you believe it was an accident, and then she did this to herself, it's nobody's fault. Like, just call the cops. If that's really what happened, I don't know why she wouldn't just call the cops. I mean, I know the answer, but.
For C4. Why didn't anybody know?
There's a lot of reasons. Colby and I've gone over that a million times, and I can tell you from the beginning, my thoughts then and my thoughts now obviously are different. I've had lots of therapy about it, to kind of work through it myself. But
so that to me, and again, I'm definitely reading between the lines here and maybe even making a reach, is just my opinion. Maybe she's blaming some of the mind games and some of the delusions put out there by Chad Daybell? Was there some brainwashing? Is that what she's talking about? Some therapy that she thinks different now than she did then? And would that change if there's another trial? I don't expect there to be, but if there were another trial, would she point the finger at that? Would she point the finger at Chad Daybell? Elizabeth said, make it make sense, Peter. Honestly, none of this lines up really with the timeline. There are holes in the timeline and there are unknowns in the timeline. So theoretically, I guess you might be able to put something like this together. But another thing I thought, obviously, as a lawyer, is if this was the case and this was a plausible story that any of the evidence backed, why wouldn't her lawyers go with that? If there was evidence that Tylee did this or that anything on Tylee was self-inflicted, why wouldn't her lawyers go with that, put forth that, make that the linchpin of their defense, have her testify to that? She has an answer for it that we're going to listen to, but if anything, they pointed the finger at Chad Daybell in closing arguments like she's talking about here. Maybe she needed a lot of therapy to figure out what she was saying in the past was wrong.
At the time, I didn't want anyone to know what Tylee had done to JJ, and I wanted to continue to protect Tylee.
And that's her answer. The reason she didn't take the stand and say this, the reason she didn't call the cops, the reason she didn't do all this stuff is because she wanted to protect Tylee.
As her mother, who has been trying to protect her whole life, like, this is my scenario, Colby. What if Tylee holding JJ down for too long, trying to get him to not scream and be loud in the apartment, which she was always upset about. We weren't in a big house anymore. We were in these tiny little apartments, and he was loud. And what if she held him down too long and realized afterwards what she had done? What if she had come running to me and told me what she had done, right? That it was an accident? Do you not think that I would have told police that I did it to save Tylee? Because you know that I would have. I would have done anything to protect Tylee. And in my mind at that time, and some people might think it's not rational, but wasn't rational at that time, because you can't imagine what it's like to find your children in that way. You can't imagine.
So she's saying basically she freaked out, let somebody handle it. Susan said, so is her story, she's only guilty of stealing Tylee's SSN money. I mean, she doesn't necessarily say that, but if you're putting it all together, yeah, maybe even the dismembering of a corpse and those types of crimes after the fact, she would be involved in a conspiracy for that potentially. So, I mean, she's still, even if her story is true, I can see some crimes that are pretty easy to prove against Lori Vallow. But, you know, the ultimate one, she doesn't. Another reason I think she's coming out and doing this now is publicly, potentially, she wants anybody that'll believe her to not think she is a monster who did this to her own children. Yeah, everybody's saying Tylee was gone. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, Teresa, you've got to suspend reality to even try to get in here and try to figure out what she's saying.
So, no, I was not being rational. However, I was still...
So, from my perspective, I would not want my client doing stuff like this while the appeal is still pending. If I believed the story and thought there was credence to it, I would have, you know, if she wanted to take the stand, she could take the stand and tell it. She said she didn't because she wanted to protect Tylee. But if I didn't believe her and she forced her way up on the stand, then you might have seen a Robert Tellis-like narrative type testimony. And the lawyers could have still put on evidence and put forth arguments that it may have been Tylee or somebody else directly pointed to. If there was an agreement, it seems like she really didn't want to. Now, lawyers do control the strategy of a trial, which you saw in closing argument when they kind of pointed the finger at Chad Daybell. But it seems like she was not about that and was trying to block that.
Protecting Tylee in my mind, and I still am. This is why I only wanted to tell you privately. I didn't want to tell the world what went on. I didn't want to tell the world.
She wanted to tell it privately. She didn't want to tell the world what's going on. What changed? I don't know. Maybe if Colby wanted to do it this way, she agreed. But she definitely wanted to tell Colby, she said. She wanted him to know because she's the only person left really that he cares about or that cared about Tylee and JJ like she did. That's what she says.
Girl that started taking her medication 2 weeks before this. She was on anti-anxiety medication, anti-depression medication. She was on a medication for panic attacks, and she was on birth control so her ovarian cyst wouldn't be bad. She was on all that stuff. And when we moved up to Idaho, 2 weeks before, a week after we got there, she said she didn't want to take her meds anymore. And I said, honey, you can't go off meds cold turkey. You can't just you have to wean off of them. And you know how she was, and you know how stubborn she was, and you know how she would do anything that I told her to do, and she would do the opposite. So no, I haven't wanted to tell everybody, and nobody could even understand how it could get to this point unless they understood what had happened to Tylee since she was 3 years old. So yes, I have been protecting Tylee. I will continue to protect Tylee. I didn't want this to be made public. I didn't testify in court for that purpose.
To protect her name?
They could put me in here for 5 lifetimes. They could put me in here for 1 million lifetimes. It doesn't matter to me.
So I just want to understand, because this is what I asked you before. You're telling me that all of this is to protect my sister's name because of what she did. Is that what you're telling me?
In my mind, yes.
Okay.
And she keeps saying in my mind because she realizes he does not agree with her. And that's clearly not what she's doing.
I think it's hard because I've come to know the prosecutors myself. I've looked at a lot of the evidence. There was nothing left of my sister to even really look at because somebody was so brutal with her. Which is why theoretically, right, if we're thinking as a defense lawyer, maybe this would have fit into the defense if they could have picked apart the actual time of death or even the cause of death for Tylee, because differentiating what happened to her before she passed and after time of death based on what was left of her. Now, all of that could have been potentially defense arguments. And he's talking about how the evidence goes. And the way I see the evidence, and I think the jury sees it, is right with how the prosecutor saw it, but could have potentially been part of the defense based on what Lori's saying now. So sick with her after she was taken.
I can't hear you, Colby. It's cutting out.
I said that.
I can't really hear anything you're saying.
I said that.
Should any of us really be surprised that she would re-victimize Tylee when she got the chance? And that it really doesn't matter, as we saw with Chad and Lori, who is in their path. They're bulldozing through because they think about number one. That's all they think about. That's really what their actions have seemed as we've gone through and listened to this case. Valerie said she claimed their spirits were gone before their bodies were missing. She walked in and their spirits were gone, so they were dead. Exactly. With some of the cryptic terminology and verbiage she uses, it leaves things open to interpretation. So I wouldn't sit here and say I'm positive about what any certain thing Lori Vallow or Chad Daybell say, exactly what it means or what it doesn't mean.
I've talked to the prosecutors. I've looked at a lot of what they've shown me. And Tylee was so brutally mistreated after her death that it wasn't even human.
This is kind of what he's saying. It's like, okay, let's say what you're saying is true. But what happened after was not that somebody who loved her, not done by somebody who cared about her, not by somebody who was trying to do right or protect her. Give me a break. But he's doing it. So just to give his frame of reference, I don't know how he's doing it. This feels impossible to me as a person, but we don't know how we would react till we deal with things like this. But he is trying to literally suppress all of his feelings and thoughts about his mom and about the situation and just talk to her and give her a safe space so that she'll openly share what she says happens. Then he'll probably share his thoughts later. I don't know, but he is not giving his thoughts and beliefs and feelings right now. He's putting all that down so he can let his mom talk, because he knows if he goes off and says what he really thinks and feels and knows to be true, that the conversation is just going to be over. So that's, I think, what he's trying to avoid. There's no agreement in Colby Ryan's voice, actions, or thoughts. In my opinion, it definitely doesn't seem like that.
It wasn't even humans.
Well, I'll tell you something about what I know about the minute. And because of my own experience of being outside of my body, right? You could care less what happens to your body after you die. You could care less.
Okay, hold on.
And I know people on Earth are really worried about it.
I don't
get
want to
it.
hear it. I'm
I
sorry.
get it.
I don't want to know.
I did not intend for that to be done to
It's
her.
the most brutal
I did
thing
not
I've
know
ever heard
that
in my
was
life.
being done to her.
So he has a breaking point, right? I mean, we're only 15 minutes in. He's 29 minutes into this and probably even more. Tracy said Colby's channel is called The Scar Wars. Yeah, go check it out, please. Go check it out. Hopefully he will get on to talk about other things and more uplifting things and maybe how he gets through it and help other victims or people that are related to victims or dealing with situations like this and still trying to keep a family and having good mental health. I hope he really, I shouldn't tell him what to do on his channel. So I don't mean he does that. I just hope and pray that he gets through this, comes out the other side healthy and happy. That's what I hope. And if his channel's about that, great. If it's about other things, great. I wish him nothing but the best success and luck on YouTube and whatever podcasts and other endeavors he has.
It's the most brutal thing I've ever heard in my life. So I don't want to go over that, really.
Me either.
JJ.
I want to think about that.
JJ was
They
found.
were not in there, Colby. They were not in there, is what I'm telling you.
But I'm telling
So
you.
no matter what happens to you when you're at a coroner's office and they cut you open and do an autopsy,
Okay.
Yeah, that's really gross. It's
No,
really
that's not
gross
what
when
I'm
they do
talking
that
about.
to anybody.
That's not what I'm talking about. But with JJ,
You're not in there.
JJ was found fighting his bag that he was put in. So did Tylee, telling me Tylee held him down too long or put a bag over his head? Because that was the evidence that JJ was being suffocated by somebody.
So she's told him his story, or she's told him her story, and now he's pushing back a little bit with the evidence, right? He held back, and now he gives her a little bit of it. Like, well, how do you explain this stuff?
That was
Okay, so that is not the case. So when I found my little precious babies, there was no bag, there was no tape,
okay, so
there's
they're just both
nothing
dead.
of that. They were just gone.
Okay.
Again, she didn't do it. She doesn't know how they got in the bag with the duct tape, anything like that.
Anything that was done was after the fact, long after the fact. They were not in there.
Okay. And that brings me to a question here. With all of this being said, what has it been like for you?
Sorry, you're cutting out.
Okay.
I didn't hear you because I
I said-
was cut out.
What has it been like for you then since 2020? How have you been affected by all this? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We're going to listen to a couple more minutes. KO said, why not just blame Alex? She's still protecting him. I don't get it. I have no idea why. One answer could be, from her perspective, she's saying she's telling the truth. One answer could be maybe she doesn't know on purpose who did what afterwards. One reason could be she is trying to protect him because he's a named co-conspirator, so that will be worse for her in the coming case with Charles Vallow's death, right? Because if she's saying, you know, Alex Cox did this, we know Alex Cox took the action in Charles Vallow's case. So if she's in with him, or maybe that's going to make it worse in her Arizona case, I don't know. I have no idea why she went this route, except for, like, if you look at some of the texts and the emails, it seems like she had some hatred toward these kids and their death scores and dark scores and zombie stuff and spirit stuff. Now she's saying her precious, perfect babies that she loved. It's hard, you know, to really try to understand her mindset and what she's saying and how she's explaining what happened. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
I said,
No, I didn't hear that. Only part of it.
since that's what you're going to say, how have you been affected since 2020? How has this affected you?
How have I not been affected? It's my whole life. Like, I was never going to tell anybody anything about anything ever.
Okay, so you would have never told
Suck
me.
it up and take it.
You would have never told
But
me.
when I was at the
You would have never
well,
told
you're
me.
the only person I wanted to tell you, and you're the only person I wanted to tell, and I wanted that to be privately.
Say, well,
The only person I deserve to know.
that can't just be something private, Mom. That's not something you can just tell me that I would just be accepting and understanding of. You have to understand that. I would never agree with you. I would never bury my siblings in some random dude's backyard and act like it never happened. I would never let that happen. I would have, even if that's what happened, which I'm going to be honest with you, I hope you can understand, because I wanted to be respectful enough to listen to what you said. I've really tried to listen and study what you've said, and based off of everything that I've been shown, that they were both murdered, and that's what you said didn't happen. So I think that we're not going to get anywhere there. I think that's just, I wanted to hear what you had to say, because you said you were there, and you said that those were your children, and those were my siblings. But I can't sit here and say that I agree with you at all. I don't think that's what happened. It's just not what I think happened based off of evidence.
When we all get to heaven, you'll know.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you. I can't
The manipulation doesn't end with Lori Vallow.
tell you anything different.
Right,
No.
no.
And I can't tell anybody different. And I don't care what anybody thinks, really. Like, they weren't there and they don't know. So
Okay. Well, that's what
She doesn't care what anybody thinks, seemingly including Colby Ryan. That was about as respectful and calm as a way you could say, I don't believe you. Ever look somebody in the eyes that's lying to you and say, I don't believe you? That's what he just did, obviously without looking her in the eyes. But
you meant then on that phone call.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
You told me on that phone call that I would know, and you said I don't know. And I definitely listened to that phone call again, because I was so hurt, because it sounded like you were just giving me a middle finger, and you said F you.
It wasn't, honey. I wanted to tell you. The attorneys told me, don't say anything on a jail call. Nothing. Don't ever say anything. They had
it's probably true, right? That's some truth probably coming out of her mouth. And, he's still upset about that, and rightfully so. There are ways that she could have told him that would have been private. But also, if you're her attorney, right? And this, you guys aren't going to like this probably. If you're her attorney and you realize Colby is working with the prosecution and Colby is doing interviews and he's got a YouTube channel and a podcast, you probably don't want to relay a lot of information from Lori Vallow to him before the trial, because it's going to go public. He doesn't care about protecting Lori Vallow, and I don't blame him. He cares about trying to get the truth out there. And if she's lying and that can help the prosecution to prove that she's lying, he'll give it to the prosecution. Help build their case against his own mom. That's the position he is in. That's the position she's put him in. And so that's probably true that the lawyer said, don't say it, maybe even especially to him. That may have been the advice from lawyers.
they pound that into you, from day one. Like, so you're asking me, and I'm like, I can't tell you on this phone call, but I want to tell you. You were the only person I wanted to tell, because I wanted you to be able to grieve, and I wanted you to be able to mourn, and I wanted you to be able to tell the difference between what they're saying actually happened and that you would know privately what really happened. Let them say whatever they want. Who cares? It's gone way out of proportion. But I wanted you to have that for your own peace. That's it. For your own peace of mind. You know Tylee better than anybody on earth except for me. You did. You lived it with me.
So can I ask you another question then?
So that's basically the end of her explaining her story, what happened, why she did it, why she didn't tell anybody about it to protect Tylee. But a very good question from Teresa. Why wouldn't Chad use this as his defense to save his own life? Love what you do, Peter. Thank you. Isn't that curious? Because he pretty much pointed the finger at everybody, including Lori, the beautiful woman who took him by storm. He never did anything bad before he met Lori Vallow. All this other bad stuff happened to Lori Vallow, and she did all this other bad stuff to other people. And guess who's not a co-defendant in Arizona with her? That man right there, Chad Daybell. If he was willing to point the finger at Chad Daybell, you think he wouldn't have pointed the finger at Tylee? And you think Lori wouldn't have told him this story or told him what she found, or that he wouldn't have known this? That doesn't make sense to me. That's a great question. Teresa says, I get why Lori didn't do it. She wanted to protect Tylee. Chad did not seem to care to protect Tylee or anybody in his trial. When you have a hiccup in your brain, it's hard to follow the rambling stories. Yeah, Mary, that one, it's very hard to follow, especially when you have a certain kind of timeline in your head of how you saw the evidence presented or how we saw the evidence presented in two different trials, two different times. And then she comes out and kind of throws this. It's like, it's hard. Peace, love, and light. Peter, thank you so much for doing this in the midst of cleaning up after the hurricane. You are the best. Hope you are doing well. Thank you so much. Peace, love, and light. Yeah, ton going on. It's a whirlwind. Honestly, I'm getting a little exhausted. as the days go by and as I realize all that needs to be done in the claims processes and deductibles and, what they're going to fight with me about and not, and just getting people involved and all the scams in this area. And it's going to be annoying, but it is what it is. We're going to get through it. Hopefully the weather continues to be nice. It's nice out. It's beautiful out today. And the next couple of days are supposed to be like that. So it's hot when we go to sleep, but not like boiling hot, which is good. That's really the only thing feels like an essential of life for me is air conditioning. I can deal without a lot of other things. But in Florida, that one's tough. So that's it for the interview. I appreciate you guys joining me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the hurricane. Thank you so much, Netwoman, for dropping 10 Lawyer memberships here. I am going to talk a little bit about the hurricane. I know people have questions, so I want to go through it with everybody. So we will do that now. We got the huge pine tree moved out of the street, but it's still on the property. So we got to have somebody come clear it out. I don't know if the city or the county is going to come do any clearing out of debris. I'll probably wait a couple days, see if they do. If they don't, then we'll have somebody come out and do that. Still a ton of debris. We cleaned out part of our pool. We got to shock it, do all that stuff. We've been over my sister and brother-in-law's house the last couple nights for dinner because they have power. They lost power. So we're going to cook for them hopefully tonight. On the grill with propane because we have stuff like that. We'll eat outside. It's beautiful out there. So we're making the most of it, and still family time is fun and good. But I'm at the office, have power, AC, everything at the office, Wi-Fi, obviously. So that's nice. And we're catching up here a little bit after a couple weeks of missing so many days. It's tough to stay on top of stuff, but we're doing everything we can. Colby and his wife are expecting their third child this month, a son. That's amazing. And I hope, like I said, nothing but the best for them. Yes, I do have electricity at the office, not at the house. And a ton of people asked about my dad's house. My dad's house is great. It basically fared the best out of all of ours. No storms, surge, which is the biggest fear for his house. I have the hiccups now. Somebody mentioned the hiccups now. I feel like I have them. He's got power, electricity, AC, everything down there. No major damage that they know of. They walked through it and stayed there last night. So thank God for that. Everything there is great. Welcome to Lola, all the new members. Nicole said, my brother's in Lakewood Ranch in Bradenton, and he still doesn't have power or cell service. House is good though. So glad you and your family are good. Yeah, I have cell service, and I forgot how bad cell service is sometimes, especially in my house, because I'm always on Wi-Fi. So you never really think about that. Back in the day when Wi-Fi wasn't as readily available, it felt like cell service was much better. Maybe I'm wrong. Lee said, hi, Peter, daughter number 1 passed the Arizona bar. Woohoo. That's amazingly. Congratulations to another lawyer. Go out there and do good works. All right. So that's our update. I'm going to do something on the Koberger timeline and new deadlines. We'll probably post that either tonight or tomorrow morning. And working on we recorded already, but getting everything edited and fixed up for our podcast to drop Monday. I'm really excited about it. Special guest, who is in the true crime world. Not just, one of my family members or close friends like that, but is a friend. Consider them a friend. So check that out. We're going to post a teaser this weekend. But that's all we got. Hit the like button, please, if you guys have not already. But till next time, hold on a second. Daybreak said, why not bring air mattresses, sleeping bags, etc. to the office and sleep there with AC? So again, if the weather really gets hot, maybe. If it's not excruciatingly hot, it's just so much easier with the beds and the setup and the food and the water and the bathrooms and everything at home. We have bathrooms at the office too, but showers and stuff. We'll see. We are balancing that, and we are thinking about that. So peace, love, and light. Peace, love, and light. Welcome to the crew. All right. But that's all we got. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.